Hey guys, it's Angela with Windows and Waves, and it's been a couple days. It's been kind of hard, a couple days, and so I thought I'd talk to you about that. Um, you know, we all have sorrow. All of us have a story that we're sorry about, and that we would love to get forgiveness for, but it's hard for people to forgive. So this episode will kind of touch on a few of the older episodes, like depersonalization, derealization, guilt, and how loved ones handle the situation. Um, Over the last 3 days, my kids have shown me that they're actually not yet okay, and they have not yet forgiven me. There's a lot of work that both of them need to do with me, and it's been pretty emotional. Lots of tears. I, in different ways, really did a lot of damage to both of them, or to the two older ones. Luckily, I think the smaller one, the younger one, she may come out of this fairly unscathed. I mean, there'll be a little bit there, but the two older ones really took the brunt. And then on top of that, through discussions, I have learned that the progress I thought I was making with my ex-husband hasn't been progress at all. That there's still too much that happened, and forgiveness just isn't there, which is heartbreaking. So I want to talk about what happened in detail during my active dependency on Klonopin, because though the withdrawals and the just hell that we go through is one aspect of it, but the other part that I really have a problem with in terms of benzos is how much they can change a person. I tell people constantly that during that time period, I wasn't me. It wasn't me. I felt like I was in a box, derealization and all that. I felt like I was in a box banging to get out and stop the progression of what was happening. I did so much damage. It's it's still really painful to talk about, actually. I was happily married. I mean, we had our issues like every married couple does. We fought here and there, sometimes worse than others, but we loved each other a lot. And we had just bought a house in a bigger town, and we were on our way to be moving. And one night when he was at work, I decided to look at one of those dating apps, which are so stupid. And I started talking to somebody, and she straight up manipulated the situation. And I was drinking already very heavily, not as heavy as it ended up being, but I was already starting to drink pretty heavily. And I think at that time I was on about 1.5 milligram a day of Klonopin. And something switched, and the real Angela, the one that you're seeing here today, was put in a cage and not allowed to come out. And this other person took over me. I once read a post about how Klonopin puts you under a spell, and that we're all walking around spellbound. And as hokey as that might sound, it's a pretty good analogy, because I wasn't behaving like me. I have told you guys over and over that I'm a very loyal person, and that loyalty went 100% away. And so did my need to care. I didn't care about anybody's response to anything. I didn't care that I was hurting my children. I didn't care that I was hurting my husband. Um, and I got into this woman's truck and drove away and left my children and my ex-husband in a house that needed to be packed up. So there was elevated stress plus me leaving, which was very cruel and unfair. And I didn't talk to anybody for a couple days. And then when I called back, my kids were confused. My ex-husband was confused. And I told him that I wanted to get a divorce, which isn't me either. More than anything, I wanted to be that old couple holding hands walking down the street. I wanted to spend my last days with him. I still do. This is a hard one for me. And through that time period where that first year while I was on the Klonopin and drinking, I have to be honest, I don't really remember any of it. I have snapshots in my mind of moments during that year, but they're like pictures. They're not full memories. I know because it was the inner me fighting to get there. I spent lots of days with my ex-husband and my kids during that time period. He rented an apartment and I went and I would hang out there. Even if we were talking about the disillusion of marriage, I was there. I wanted to be with my family. I wanted to be with him. Because, and I've said it before, he's my best friend. He still is. Anyway, his mother came to visit, who I love. I adore her. And I don't know, she came and the real me popped back out full force. And I realized that I needed to communicate that that's where I wanted to be, but I needed some help. And so he and I just decided to get back together and really work at it because we love each other. And I went away and went to a hospital for a little while, and they got me off of the alcohol, and they unfortunately kindled me with Ativan. And I came home from that, and I don't really remember the 2 weeks in between. I do know that I wanted to be with him and that I didn't want to be with her. But the negative self-talk was building and building and building, and I ended up eating half of my bottle of Klonopin because I wanted the voices, for lack of a better word, to stop, and it put me in a state-run facility where they then cold turkeyed me from Klonopin. But he was there. He came to visit. He brought me Oreos. He was there. And I was in acute detox and hurting, but I was so happy that he came. And then I got out and I was in shock, really. I mean, I had been detoxing from alcohol and now I was detoxing from a cold turkey and a Kindle, and my brain was not functioning. He had to go to work, and my dad and stepmother came to visit, and I can remember just sort of being brain dead. My head didn't want to work and I couldn't communicate. And every time I tried, it would just piss somebody off. He and I were trying to talk and I would just, I don't know, it just wasn't working. We were fighting and he went back to work. And we wrote an email, and I told him, that this is still what I wanted, and we were working at this. And he wrote me back saying that he had faith that we could get through this. And so I started hanging out with a friend, or who I thought was a friend, and she spent a couple nights, but it was not anything. But I wanted to tell him before he came home, so he didn't hear it from the girls, that she had spent the night, and he and I had a miscommunication. He thought that I had been with her, and he told me he didn't want me to be here when I got home, or when he got home, which now in my, with my cognitive stuff working, I understand why. But I got in her car and I drove away, and she immediately started to work on me. She told me the minute that door shut that the reason he told me he didn't want me there is because he didn't want me anymore, that he probably had moved on, that he was over my garbage, that he was not in love with me anymore. And she knew that I was mentally weak, I guess, because I believed her. I didn't ask him. I just believed her. And we ended up being together for almost a year, and it took her 3 months before she started hitting me. But those first 3 months, she did a real doozy on my head. And I just kept doing horrible things to him, which I won't get into, but it just snowballed. And I said a lot of things that he, didn't want to hear. And she took over all my accounts and wrote emails for me. And then about December of this year, I started to feel myself coming back, to feel the person who you're not talking is talking to you. And I didn't want to be without my family. I mean, my family is number one to me. I didn't really have a family growing up. This is my family. And I was having a hard time financially, and I asked if I could move back into the guest house, and he said yes. And then in March, I had a rage issue, which we've talked about, and that kind of set me back. But I have been trying my hardest to make things better between me and my children. And over the last few days, they have... Oh, there's my cat. Thanks, cat. Over the last few days, they have let me know that they're still really hurting. That we need to work on a lot of stuff still. And in that time period, he's let me know that he doesn't love me anymore, and that too much has happened, and that I'm probably never going to be back with him. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry to all of them. I'm sorry that I did the things I did. I'm sorry that my brain was taken hostage. I'm sorry that I hurt, especially my middle one, so much. I'm sorry that I put so much responsibility on my two older girls. I'm sorry that I pushed away the love of my life. And he and I run on this whole thing of the best apology is a changed behavior. And I know my behavior is changing. I'm going back to who I was. I'm feeling more confident. I'm feeling better about myself. And I'm realizing that nothing has changed with the real me. I still love him. I adore my children. I would never, in my right mind, have left them for anybody. I would never have driven away. And I know that I'm not the only one who did horrible, crazy things on Klonopin. I would love to hear your experiences, because I think that there are a lot of people out there who are quite possibly sitting in the same mental and emotional place where I am, where I'm just kind of distraught about the past. And I'm working on accepting it and forgiving myself, but it's hard. So if any of you want to comment or talk about it, you can always comment on below, or you can email me at windowsandwaves@gmail.com. That's Windows, the letter N, waves@gmail.com. And subscribe, please. I like, I get some security out of knowing there are people out there who are listening to me. And like I said, I would love to hear your experiences too, because I think it makes us not feel so alone. But I'm sorry I've been so emotional during this one, but it's real. And I really hope that all of you are doing a great job surviving. And I will talk to you soon.